Life Hacks Beyond Convention with Dee and Sonia. Neurodiverse from birth, then maybe you're not suited for what we use as a standard school system.
Mm.
Like
I've
there's the
been
Waldorf
encouraged to
system.
see little pockets of school systems that try and cater for different needs. Like there have
Yes.
been a few schools even here in Victoria over the last. When did I do my training? It was 2011. No, 2011 was when I got my first job as a teacher. So it must have been more like 2008, 2009. Since then, and I've kept an eye on the, different types of jobs that are out there and whatnot. And yeah, there's been a few schools that definitely try and cater for different needs. Like one of the schools, they had classes starting at 7 a.m. for the early birds, and they'd have classes going right through till 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of it. I don't know whether it was successful. I haven't followed any of them. I just know
Mm.
that, that was there at one point in the last decade.
Mm.
And yeah, and there's been a couple, and there was another program where my kids actually locked into it, where we had a teacher come and teach at the library. That was from a
Okay.
public school. Like she was
Mm.
actually a public school teacher. And we were one of her little campuses, like a few of us
Yeah.
homeschoolers, and
Yeah.
and we go to the library
Oh.
just for it was only for a couple of hours a week, just for
Mm.
extra assistance.
Yep.
So I'm encouraged that there's been pockets of people coming up with innovative ideas and trying.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's definitely not mainstream. And a
No.
system like that, it was very hard to cater for such a wide variety of needs.
It's near impossible if you're going to have 26 to 30 children in a classroom.
And
Yeah.
even just
Um,
the difference between boys and girls. I don't know that I necessarily advocate for a girls only education and a boys only education. I don't know.
mm.
I haven't thought about that deeply enough. But I can see the benefit that could come from being more focused on perhaps boys and girls, as in, just different needs and the way that they
Yes.
interact in the classroom. Like girls tend, now I know not all girls are the same, but tend
Mm.
to be more interested in their academic learning than boys are,
Mm.
whereas the
Yeah.
boys often need more kinesthetic type of learning activities
Learning. Yeah.
to engage them. So,
Mm.
yeah, so I think so. Just
Mm.
something as basic as that, we've just got different needs just by whether you're a boy or a girl,
Yeah.
and
Our
then
educate.
you add
Yeah.
in all those other needs on top of that
Yes. Yeah.
and differences.
Mm. Well, our education system was set up for the Industrial Revolution to
Well, that's
produce factory
exactly right.
workers, and lots of girls and some boys would be good as factory workers. Lots of boys would be good at mining and things like that because it's more physical and stuff if you look back at the history. But how do we cater for that in a high-tech society? And we don't need so many hunters and gatherers. How can we redirect that in a way that's enjoyable for those that are hyperactive? Yeah, it is difficult. There's a
Well, we
school
do have
down.
a very big focus on how far and how much the kids have got to learn, don't we? Like we have this expectation that, they'll definitely finish year 12, and
Mm.
huge majority of them will go on and do higher education of some description. Um, and even that, you've got to look at that like, well, does that actually suit everybody?
But also, does it
Now,
suit society?
yeah, does
Because
it
who's
suit
going to do the
society?
other stuff?
Because we definitely, what a blessing that the general
Mm.
person got to learn to read,
Yeah.
and that we
Mm.
actually had access to information as a result of that. Because prior to that, it was only the very wealthy people that,
Mm.
those in leadership and wealthy
Yeah,
families that
that's
could
right.
read and write. So therefore, your information was very funneled, wasn't it?
Tightly held. Yeah,
Tightly
tightly
held.
held.
So what a blessing that we all can. I think it's a good thing that we all learn to
Yes.
read and write, because then
Yeah.
we can access the information and understand what's
Yeah.
going on in the world around us. But
Mm.
outside of that, how much of this learning is a requirement that has become
Yeah.
benefit
Yeah.
society?
It's
Just a
interesting.
question. I don't. It's not
Yeah.
a definitive statement. It's just a question. Yeah.
Yeah. I think living in a small town over the last 25 years, I've watched some very different children, of friends and stuff. And there's a couple of lads who were distinctly ADHD, very hyperactive, always in trouble at school. And they brought in this, basically, you couldn't leave school till you were 17, or you had to do
Mm,
year 12. And it's like a government directive.
mm,
So it's semi-enforced. And these kids were just wreaking havoc at school. Well, I think they both left at 15. Their parents found a way to get them out, and they both got jobs at 15, which is unheard of in these days, because you're not allowed to
mm,
leave that early. Um, and one has gone on to do different jobs, different trainings, done really well, owns 2 homes, and he would be not yet 30.
mm,
And he's successful, and now he's decided, "Oh, okay, I'll drop my wages and I'll go and do a trade." So now he's doing a trade as well. So his abilities to learn different skills are exceptional. And the other
mm,
one did somewhat the similar. He ended up getting into a trade, but he stayed in the trade, has his own home, has his own business, and is currently traveling overseas for fun.
mm,
And he's probably a decade older than the other child. But it's like these kids were the ones that were, the classic never going to do anything, never going to go
mm,
anywhere. And they're the 2 most successful I know.
mm.
Yeah, we're not, like you said, we're not utilising their abilities effectively. Luckily,
Well,
some of
because
them are.
when I was younger, I didn't see. I was the very sort of last of it going through with the trade schools, but I
Mm,
saw elements of that while I was at high school. Of the Some of the kids would go and do much more of the technical studies and those type of subjects, etc.,
mm,
because they were more focused. And I have to, focused on practical
mhm,
outcomes. And I have to wonder why we haven't returned to like offer tech schools and things like that for not. I mean, back then it was mainly boys, because I was actually,
mm,
my girlfriend and I, we were the first 2 girls in our school to ever be allowed to do technical studies.
oh,
No other girl in our class did it, but we
mm,
did. After us, within a couple of years after me, all of the girls did technical studies.
yeah,
So it's good to, it's good that we've seen a change in that, because some girls love tech studies and some boys don't want to do tech studies.
yeah,
Uh, but you think, well, it'd be nice if there was a bit more of a return to that being an option, like have tech schools for
yeah,
those kids that
yeah.
want to do those more techy, more physical applied learning.
They've brought in a system where they do a little bit through their high schools somehow. I'm not sure how
Oh,
it
they can
works.
learn to do flying at in Port Pirie, one of
Oh
the
yes,
schools.
they build a plane, and yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
that's at a in North Christian school. Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
that's
mm,
pretty
yeah,
phenomenal. So yeah, so I
yes,
guess that's what they're trying to do, isn't it? Bring that in.
mm,
I guess I haven't.
yes,
I've actually, because it was the flying, and there was something else at the other school that was. It might have been agriculture, maybe.
mm.
And
We
I
do
haven't
some
seen as much of that here in Victoria, but that might be just because I'm not looking for it too. It
mm.
might be there, and I'm
Yeah,
just not
we've got
looking for it.
and South Australia's got an agricultural high school, Urbray, and then it's got an agricultural college,
Mm,
Roseworthy. So yeah, so there probably is a bit more in here with those, so they can drive them into those streams
mm,
if they need to. But yes, I mean, we did some vocational tests, and I'm talking well over 50 years ago. At high school, put me through a vocational test, and I was told all I could be is a secretary or a receptionist. Yeah, I hated it. And it really wasn't. Yeah, they didn't really assess my capacity effectively. So if we've got better tests to do that now, then perhaps that should be looked at. But also kids should be asked what they like to do, because that worked for me with homeschooling, because my child was going to object to just about anything. So I said, what do you want to do? I want to cook. Okay. Packet of muffins. You've got to read, you've got to add up, you've got to, yeah. So it's finding that stream and encouraging it and providing education around it.
Mm, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a huge advocate for homeschooling, as you know.
Yeah.
Tailor it to each child because, you know, you've just got a small classroom. It's just your children.
Mm.
And so,
I
and
would
you, who knows your children the best? You do. So,
mm,
yeah.
I would love if we had enough teachers to teach, say, half a dozen, maybe 8 kids in a classroom.
Mm,
Imagine yeah, what could be done out of that, but we don't. Yeah, and
mm.
we don't have the funding and we don't have the understanding. We're just following on the old way of doing things still. So I think
Is-
homeschooling's had growth since COVID.
Mm, yeah, I think so.
Mm,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more awareness of it and a lot more acceptance of it as well.
yes.
Because
Mm,
when we homeschooled, we were seen as oddities.
yep. You got the socialization question, or if you met an objectionable teacher, you'd get what makes you think you can teach the child. And there's 2 ways to approach that. One, for starters, they didn't know the curricula that were available through different services that we were able to
Mm,
access. Um, so lack of awareness there. But also, I taught my child to walk and to eat with a spoon. So I guess I've got a good grounding at that point. And just build on it because, yeah, we
yeah,
do teach them a
absolutely.
lot, even if they're in school.
Not all teachers are good teachers.
No.
Most
Mm.
teachers think they are, though. That's a.
Yeah. My
uh,
mother had a friend who was a teacher, and this is like this woman would be long gone now, but she had a habit. I think at the teachers' college they had in South Australia a century ago, they just told them, you know more than anybody, whether you do or not, and have that attitude. And she was horrible to be around in a social situation because she'd just tell people to shush, just do that. Yeah, there were behaviours that just weren't appropriate for a group of adults the same age. So she treated everyone like little children.
yeah, well,
Mm.
I'd like to see a real change in the university programs for teachers, and they have tried to make changes along the way. Like when I did mine, there was no behaviour management at all. It was all
Okay.
just, you know, this is the new way to do maths and this is how you teach the maths or whatever, you know, whatever the subject was. Because did um, primary school, it was quite a generalist focus on quite the generalist subjects. If you're doing high
Mm.
school, you're focusing on whatever your specialty is. But like a, a young person who's just only finished a university degree last year or the year before, very recently in the last 1 or 2 years, and has been teaching in high schools,
Mm.
she just said, yep, there was not one single class on behaviour management. It's all just focused on subjects and whatnot. And so it's like, well, that's not helpful. Now, if you're a bit of an older person coming in with life skills, which I was, like I was
Mm.
44 before I got my teaching degree, but So you've got a lot to, and I'd had a lot to do with children. Like I'd homeschooled my kids. I'd worked with a lot of other children in a lot of different um, environments and jobs. So I was able to bring that knowledge to working in a classroom. But if you're 18, you've left school at 18, gone to teachers, gone to university, done your education, and you come out at 22, how much life experience have you managed to build
None.
for behaviour management?
It's all been, that's one of my challenges with it. It's all been in the education system. You haven't lived in the real world or worked in the real
Well, it's
world.
very difficult for those young, and some of them, because some of the teachers just have a natural ability, like
Mm.
for whatever reason, whether it's a personality thing, whether it's stuff they've seen at home. I mean, I don't know.
Mm.
Some of them might have younger siblings that they've worked with a lot. So there are just some natural teachers
Yeah.
that it's worked out okay for, but some of them are not natural, don't have those
Mm.
natural instincts, and it's something they need to learn.
Yeah.
And so I really feel for some of the young teachers that
No, yeah, I'm trying to process that. No behavior management.
pretty much none. Yeah.
And of course, the behaviors have changed hugely. When we were kids, we wouldn't have squeaked because we would have got hit, with a ruler or one of those dusters, chalkboard dusters. Oops. Oh, okay. Stop talking. Yeah. So the culture's changed so massively from that.
Mm,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I remember hearing stories about Clare Primary and kids. One girl got her arm broken
mm,
um, because she was doing something stupid. The teacher couldn't stop it. She was just going to she was jumping from desk to desk during the class. Like,
mm.
how do you, and you're not allowed to touch them and you're not allowed to do anything else. So, yeah, so what do? Send them home to mum and dad. And mum and dad are working, so they're home alone. So, yeah.
Well, and the kids themselves have just got a different way of viewing the world to when we were young. Like it has changed a lot. It's like,
Mm,
you can't tell me what to do.
mm, yeah.
Whereas we probably had a different way of interacting with adults.
Oh, hugely different.
Mm,
Yes, yeah. Adults had respect regardless of what they did, said, how they looked, everything. It was just, um, yeah, a very screwed up version, really, in a lot of ways. So we've just sort of gone the other way a little bit,
mm.
almost, I think. So we need to sort of bring back some balance somehow. And most
Yeah.
of what's changed is good. Like most of what's changed, I think, is good
Mm. Oh,
because,
look, I agree because we need to
mm,
recognise children are little people. They're not.
yes,
They're not just a possession to sit there and look
yes,
nice at the dinner table.
yeah, yeah.
um,
So I think one of the things I noticed early on when my child was at school, though, they did this training, mandatory training about no one can hit you.
mm,
You know that no one can hit you. You know that no one can do this to you. You know that no one can do that to you. The other half of it's missing. At no point were they told, you mustn't hit people, you mustn't trip people up, you mustn't.
mm,
So they were all told that they were worthy of great, of safe treatment, but they weren't told that they also had to treat others with
mm,
safety and respect.
mm.
And yeah, I sort of saw that as a challenge because a lot of them just adopted it just one way.
Yep. Yeah.
So, mm, and I'm not sure if that's been fixed.
Yeah. Look,
Mm,
I don't know. I've been out of the
mm.
schools for a little while because I transitioned into adult education. So,
Smart
yeah.
move.
But
Yeah.
I do know there's issues, like, because I do know a couple of,
Mm,
at least one young teacher. So,
mm.
there definitely is difficulties in the system that,
Yeah.
you know, but
Mm,
yeah, I guess most teachers really do want to be good teachers.
mm. I
And
think so.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a job to take on, so you wouldn't want to take it on unless you had a passion to,
Mm,
yeah, transferring knowledge to young people.
yeah.
So, what's the other thing I saw a little while back? Somebody said, "Oh, what's the thought of putting cameras on your children?" Was it? It was cameras on the children or the teacher to see what's really happening. And my thought was, well, if you're going to do that, you've got to put on the other group too. You can't just put it on teachers and not put it on kids, or you can't put it just on kids. I think it was probably kids they wanted to put it on because they thought their kids were being, yeah, mistreated by the teacher. That you've got, if you're going to surveil, you need to do everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I
that's
need to ponder that for a little while
yeah,
because my
yeah,
gut response to that is what?
yeah, mine
um,
too. Um,
um, I do think it is difficult if a child is being targeted by a teacher,
oh yes, there's no doubt that
because
happens.
most times probably the kids not going to be necessarily believed, especially if
Mm.
they've got a background of being a bit rambunctious. Is that a good word?
Yeah, rambunctious. Yeah, yeah,
um, so if they've had difficult behaviours for whatever reason, then they're
yeah.
unlikely to be believed. So, but I don't know.
But
I
if they've had difficult behaviours, they're unlikely to be tolerated too. So it's that
exactly.
catch. Yeah,
I look. I don't know. My gut
I'm
would
not.
be I would not be in favour of surveillance in
uh,
classrooms. However, I do think there does need to be more accountability
Yeah.
sometimes
Mm.
for
Yes.
some classrooms. I don't know
Mm.
where that comes in, how
Mm.
that comes in, but
Yeah.
maybe it needs to be if there's been complaints about a teacher,
Yeah.
consistent complaints from more than one source,
Mm.
then
And yeah, and vice versa.
mm,
Consistent complaints about a student or behaviours that
student,
are
yep, from more
dangerous.
than one source,
Yeah,
once
I
again.
know that we started homeschooling at a point where my child would have gone into a classroom and was scheduled to go into a classroom with a really good teacher, but he was a screamer. He's
Mm,
one of those people that screamed all the time, made high, and I know my child would not have coped with that at all,
mm,
and that would have been disastrous. So
mm.
perhaps we need personality assessments on both sides to go, are you going to cope with this dynamic or not? If,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, there needs to be open communication between teachers. Like parents need to feel that they can go and talk to the teachers. Teachers need
mm,
to listen and feel like they can also talk to the parents, doesn't it? And sometimes there's
yes,
definitely a breakdown of communication. Because I always
mm,
remember with one of my children who did go to school for a few years, and she was actually frightened of one of her teachers when he was loud.
yep,
And I had to, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done as a parent was go into the
yeah,
classroom and tell him that she was
yeah,
frightened of
hmm,
him and tell him why, like give him the
mm,
background story of what had gone on in our lives that had,
yeah,
caused that. And, his response, he was just like, oh my
hmm,
goodness. His response was, "Oh my goodness, that is terrible." Well, we're going to put something into place for that, and he
hmm,
actually put a process into place for her that if
yep,
she needed to leave the classroom because he'd got too loud, he would try not to be loud.
yep,
But if he was too loud, then she had permission to simply get up and leave. She
yep.
didn't have to ask permission. She didn't have to put her hand up or anything else. And just doing that meant she never needed to use it.
No, I was going to say, I bet she didn't need to because she knew she could. She wasn't trapped anymore.
Well, yeah, and she knew he
Mm,
didn't mean it. Like
mm,
just because he was loud didn't mean
yep,
anything was going to come of that. It was just he
yep,
was loud. He wasn't
yeah.
angry.
Yes, it's
Mm.
volume, not aggression or anger.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I
that's
think,
brilliant.
well, and that was that. Yeah, that was, and that was. Well, I just always remember the way he responded. He was so upset to hear that
Mm,
that's what was happening, and
mm,
he just did everything possible to ensure that she was in a safe place.
mm. And the
Yeah, and
openness
that
to
gives you, that heartens you as a parent,
yeah,
but it also gives you confidence that there are really caring, really good teachers out there,
there are.
because he
Mm,
wouldn't be the only one that would, you know,
yeah.
try
I
and
th
make
yeah,
responses anyway.
yeah.
Good responses, yeah.
I think I've got more teacher friends now, and through homeschooling than I did before I homeschooled, which was interesting.
Mm,
But yes, there are some really great ones out there, and yeah, we need more.
mm.